Yeah, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Commodity TV out of our COVID-19 home studio here in Switzerland. And with me here is now the head of worldwide investor relation, James Wellsted from Sibanye-Stillwater, the world's largest platinum and also palladium producer, third largest gold producer in the world. And we want to talk about the situation, of course, of the company, and maybe you want to get some new information out of James. James, good morning. How are you?
Yeah, morning, Jochen, and morning to your viewers.
Thank you.
We're all good here in lockdown, but all good. Thank you.
Super. That's super important. Yeah, you had a lot of news releases recently, but maybe the first important question from my side would be, what's the situation now in the company with, let's say, a lockdown which happened in South Africa? What's going on with COVID-19? How is the company affected?
Yeah, so let me talk a little bit first about from a national level. Our government or the president announced a lockdown on the 25th of March. I think South Africa's been a little bit behind Europe in terms of the phases that we've gone through. So it was an appropriate time to do it. And you'll notice that if you look at the coronavirus statistics, we're really doing relatively well, in fact, in terms of infections and deaths due to COVID-19. Initially, on the 25th of March, they announced a full lockdown of the whole country, which meant that we put our minds on care and maintenance and really only had essential services, maintaining the infrastructure, etc. But then 2 days later, there was an amendment announced that we could then resume limited operations so that we could run our smelters and refineries. So that was on the 27th. So we've been bringing those operations online. And then last week, on the 16th of April, the government announced the first relaxation of the national lockdown. And essentially, mining is one of the industries that has benefited first. We are allowed to increase our production to 50% during the lockdown, which should end next week on the 30th of April. And then thereafter, we'll be allowed to build up in a phased manner as long as we've got agreed safety protocols and structures and procedures in place at our operations. So, even though the COVID-19 has been a big disruption for everybody, I think the way our government's managed it has been pretty pragmatic. And we are coming back into production, which will mean that the losses that we would have experienced will now be minimal.
Mm-hmm. How does it work for your workers in South Africa? Because let's put it that way. Here in Switzerland, if you have employees, you can say, okay, you go onto a short work form, Kurzarbeitergeld in German said, yeah. And so the state is paying like 80% of the wage. How does it work in South Africa? Because I could imagine if your workers do not get money, they don't have money. And so the families are suffering. Are you taking care of that, or how does that work?
To some extent, yes. So, I mean, we pay on behalf of our employees an insurance into an unemployment insurance fund, which is managed by the government. So people can claim from that if they're not receiving salaries. But we have covered most of the salaries through the lockdown period. The longer it continues, though, the more difficult it's going to be for us to continue paying salaries and benefits. So that's why this relaxation that government announced is quite welcome. But no, our government doesn't really have the capacity to finance or to pay people salaries. We're not as affluent a country as maybe Switzerland. Yeah.
Of course. Okay, so you're helping the people. This is the essence of that, right?
That's correct. So we've got ongoing, obviously paying salaries as much as we can as an industry, but we've got very, very significant community programs in place where we assisting the communities with food parcels, with medicines, with sanitizers, etc. And we've also, as an industry, most of the mines now, one of the requirements is that we'll make available some of our properties. So we've got old hostels that are no longer in use that we've now converted to quarantine and isolation facilities, and we'll use our own medical facilities to obviously try and take some of the burden away from the government and assist them in that way. So there's a lot of programs ongoing to try and help government and the communities that our employees generally live in.
Fantastic. So that means mining is on social care.
Very much
That's
so, yeah.
important. Super. No, I really liked it because that's really important. Also for the future relationship to your people, because normally people don't forget when you help them. Question. Let's move a little bit to the US, to Stillwater, to the Stillwater mine, also to the Blitz project. What is the status there? Because I have seen in a comment some weeks ago that, how can I say that Stillwater is on the positive critical industry list for the US. So that means this is a company which has to be taken care of, which has to be saved. So what's the status there? Are you also in a lockdown there? What's going on?
That's correct, Jochen. So obviously in South Africa with the lockdown here, South Africa produces about 70% plus of global PGMs. The other producing areas being obviously Norilsk in Russia, and then, of any size is our US PGM operations in Montana. So with the phased lockdown in the US, what was recognized there is the need to continue producing PGMs, which have got applications in various cancer medicines and medical, things like stents and pacemakers, etc. So they considered essential items. It's an essential industry, and as a result, we have been able to continue operating there. We had to reduce the number of employees on site in line with the local health regulations. So what we did was we stopped or suspended non-essential capital at Blitz, which is the growth project, and then demobilized the contractors who were mainly working on those non-essential capex activities. And so in so doing, we reduced our workforce by over 30%. So we could then observe social distancing requirements. So that's enabled us to keep our Stillwater and East Boulder operations going through this whole period. So that's been very, very fortunate for us, because I think the other South African PGM producers obviously don't have that geographical diversification, which allows them to continue operating in other areas.
So that would mean that, like, let's say, just an assumption from my side, maybe you're losing, let's say, 30–40% of the production volumes, but all the others are really shut down. So that means the market is shrinking in total, yeah, but you are able probably, yeah, let's say, to benefit from higher prices because they will come back soon, because we have to restart the car maker building, the medtech building, etc., right?
Yeah, so we initially saw a sharp collapse. I think it was late February or early March actually, in rhodium, palladium, and platinum prices, and that really started with the shutdown of a lot of the auto OEMs in Germany, France, etc. So in Europe and then in the US, a lot of the auto manufacturers shut down their plants with the lockdowns, and there was a response from the market with the prices collapsing. But soon after that, we obviously announced the lockdown in South Africa. And because of that supply shock, which has taken a significant amount of PGM supply out of the market, we've seen the market come back into balance again. So the prices have responded and recovered somewhat, not quite to the peaks where they were in February, but are still very, very solid prices. So, at current rates and with our production now resuming, and with current basket prices, it's looking very, very good. And as we build up production, I think we'll be in a very solid financial position.
Fantastic. Is it possible to do, let's say, any, well, I even wouldn't say guidance, but what is your personal feeling about a production scenario for 2020 and maybe also 2021? Is that possible to say anything, or is that too early?
Yeah, 2020 is a bit difficult to give guidance on. We've actually just recently pulled our guidance for now, and it's mainly due to the COVID uncertainty. So while we know we're building up to 50% production levels over the next couple of weeks, we're not certain at what rate the government will allow us to continue building those production levels up through May and into June. So it's very difficult to give guidance for 2020. If the relaxation is done in a phased manner, though, we should be back, we could well be back into close to full production by the end of this quarter or by the end of June, which would mean that the second half of the year would be almost normal.
Mhm.
And certainly we don't expect any impact in 2021 from this. I think we'll
Mhm.
be operating very well through to
Mhm.
2021.
Fantastic. Let's talk a little bit about finance. What is now the structure of your debt on the one hand, because there are some payments to be made the next years. So are you safe for that? That's the first thing. And the second thing is we were discussing last year of a dividend for this year. Obviously, that's probably not possible. It's probably postponed to 2021. So can you give a little bit of an insight here, please?
Yeah, so at the moment, we're in a good position in terms of our liquidity. Obviously, last year was difficult. We had the 5-month gold strikes in South Africa, which affected the first half of the year. And we also had some issues with Rustenburg when we moved from a purchase of concentrate toll arrangement, which meant that we didn't recognize any revenue from Rustenburg
Mhm.
PGM operations in the first quarter of the year. And we also didn't own Lonmin in that first quarter of the year. Subsequent to that, we obviously acquired Lonmin in June, and metal prices increased in the second half of last year. And in the first quarter of this year, we were receiving very, very good gold and PGM revenues. And we had all of those operations operating normally. So we're in a much stronger financial position than we were last year.
Mhm.
Liquidity is still very good, and obviously with our operations resuming, the risks of any financial issues are minimized significantly. So at this point, as I said, it does depend on how long this COVID-19 impact continues and impacts on our operations. But if we do see our operations normalizing by the end of this half or end of this quarter, end of June, that dividend still might be possible, to be honest.
Wow. Okay. And would you go back to the old yield of 5%? Just asking.
Maybe not immediately, but our intention is still to be a leading dividend payer in the industry.
Yeah.
So, over the course of a couple of periods, we would certainly want to get back to that.
Mhm. Fantastic. Great. So that was a super final word, James. Thank you very much. Great update. Highly appreciate it. And yeah, stay healthy. Kind regards to everybody. And I look forward then to our next update, because we should do this more often.
No, thank you, Jochen, and be safe or everybody, please be safe out there. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah, ladies and
Thanks a
gentlemen,
lot.
that was James Wellsted from Sibanye-Stillwater, and you heard it. Yeah, things are still going, let's say, not the nice way, but the smooth way. And they have resumed production at least for 50% in South Africa. US is working quite well. Of course, here also a little bit of a shrinking. But what I really liked, what James said, is if things are okay after in the first half and let's say normalizing in the second half of the year, and they are doing much better even than last year, because they had last year this long strike. So even maybe a dividend would be possible. This is something I really love to hear as a shareholder, of course, also. And it looks like that, yeah, James and the whole management, that they are really doing a great job here. And Sibanye-Stillwater is an outstanding company for sure. And I like, of course, also the social engagement, because this is how you make friends in difficult times. So thanks for watching us, and bye-bye from Switzerland.